Hey guys, in this video I'm going to walk you through the steps on how to share virtual game cards from one Switch console to a different Nintendo account that you can play with on a separate console. This is a pretty cool feature. Now we need to make sure that this feature is enabled on both Nintendo accounts that we're going to be doing this sharing with. So I'm going to open up my primary Nintendo account here on my Switch 2. In my user settings, I'm going to go down to where it says online license settings and I'm going to select that. And I just need to make sure that this is toggled on. So it is toggled on my primary Nintendo account. Now on the Switch 1, on the other Nintendo account, I'm gonna make sure that this is toggled on. So again, going to the user settings, and then finding that option with the online license settings, opening that up. And I just need to make sure that this is on. It's also important to note during this first sharing of a virtual game card, the consoles need to be close to each other so that they can link up and connect with each other. You don't even need to be hooked up to the same internet connection for this to work, but the consoles do need to be close to each other during this linking process. Now what we want to do is open up our virtual game cards. We're going to select that, and I'm going to be sharing from my primary Nintendo account that has my virtual game cards on it. And let's say I would want to send over Cuphead. So I'm going to select that. And I'm going to be loading this game onto another system. Another way that you can go about doing this is lending games to family members that are in your group for your online account. But in this example, I'm going to be showing you how to do this by loading it onto another system with this option. And once we're linked up to the console that we would like to share with, what we're going to do is select A on where it says load on other system. So I'm going to click A on that. And it's going to take the virtual game card from my Switch 2 and send it over to the Switch 1. And that virtual game card has now been loaded on the other system. So I'm going to head back to my home page, and I can see that Cuphead is now being loaded up onto the Switch 1. If it's not already downloaded and installed, it should do that automatically. But I can confirm that the virtual game card has been sent over because when hovering it on the home screen, I can see that little game card is no longer filled in on the Switch 2, whereas over on the Switch 1, I can see that that virtual game card is now highlighted and filled in. So we can see the virtual game card is now on the Switch 1. Now that the software has successfully loaded on the Switch 1, I'm going to launch it with my other Nintendo account to show you that we can play this on a different account. So I'm going to launch that. The game is now up and running, playing on the Switch 1. So if I try to launch it on the Switch 2, we're going to get an error as we're loading it up. So I'm going to select my primary account. And this was the account that had purchased Cuphead, and we can see when someone else is playing that virtual game card, we aren't going to have access to it, so it's going to boot us back to the home screen. Now, the nice thing is, if the person who was playing it on the other account closes out of it, so I'm going to select Cuphead right here with the X button on the controller. That's going to open up this menu, and I'm going to close out of the game on this console. I actually still have access to now play Cuphead on the Switch 2, even though that virtual game card is over on the Switch 1. So I'm going to open this up, and we can see even though that virtual game card is loaded up on the other secondary console, I can still play it on the primary account that had originally purchased it if the person on the other console isn't playing it and doesn't have it loaded up. Now, to get the virtual game card sent back to the original console, it's pretty simple. On the primary console, you can just open up your virtual game cards and selecting that primary account. And then what I want to do is go back to Cuphead, and I can load it back onto this system. So loading it onto my Switch 2, it's going to be sent from the Switch 1 back over to the Switch 2. And now that it's back over on the primary Nintendo account that had purchased it, the account that I was sharing it with is no longer going to have access to playing it. So if I upload it and then select that other Nintendo account, I can see that I'm not going to be able to play it at that point. This is the process that you can go through to share your virtual game cards from the primary Nintendo account that had purchased the game. You can send it over to a different Nintendo account and they can play it. You can share it that way, and the person who's borrowing the game can play it as long as it's loaded up onto their Nintendo Switch. You just both can't play the game at the same time in this instance. But once that game card gets sent back, then the person who is borrowing it won't have access to it at that point. So I hope this quick tutorial is helpful. I appreciate you guys stopping by. Consider subscribing for more content in the future.